competency is no longer excusable. Ladies and gentlemen, far too often Ghanaians have denounced abandoned infrastructure following changes in government. This long-term plan has a strong potential to respond to this cry and address that systemic inefficiency. We are in a better position to ensure continuity, even in change, for this plan. Thank you, Mr. President and NPPC, for holding this responsibility. That is why the Ministry of Finance intends to also work closely with NPPC and Parliament to institutionalize a mechanism for ensuring that all publicly funded or PPP-supported projects align fully and completely with this plan and ensure continuity of projects, even when there is change in government. This plan is an articulation of the grand vision which needs to be effectively communicated to its intended beneficiaries. Beyond today, the Ministry of Finance commits to work with NDPC and related agencies to undertake targeted strategic investment engagements with key stakeholders. This will secure not only popular, political, or policy acceptance across broad stakeholders, but it will also underpin our collective efforts to entice private sector partnerships for the implementation of the plan. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, under the leadership of President Mahama, we are witnessing a renewed national focus on sustainable, people-centered infrastructure, a kind that expands opportunity, enhances productivity, and bridges inequality. With macroeconomic stability in sight, thanks to the bold reforms and initiatives implemented this year, the Ministry of Finance is eager to work with the NDPC and others to sustain our focus on long-term infrastructure development. The Ghana Infrastructure Plan will respond to the timeless wisdom: by failing to plan, you are planning to fail. Today, by launching this plan, we have escaped our first trap. But we must be reminded that a brilliant plan will not succeed unless it is executed effectively. That is now our collective responsibility. The Ministry of Finance stands ready to co-lead the execution. Together, let us join hands to build a modern infrastructure that enhances connectivity and trade. Let us join hands together to improve quality of life through access to essential services. And let us join hands together to position Ghana as a hub for sustainable investment in Africa through infrastructure development. These are the pillars of Ghana's economic transformation. We commend you, the NPPC, for your leadership and vision, and we thank His Excellency President Mahama for his foresight and enduring commitment to building our nation. May God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Thomas Diakon, and Deputy Finance Minister, for the statement from the Ministry of Finance. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you a short movie. Sadly, there will be no popcorn or hot dogs, but at the end, I'm sure you'll be clapping. So, this is a video of the Ghana Infrastructure Plan.
It is projected that Ghana's population will rise to 50. By its centenary year of 2057. Since independence, Ghana has progressively made strides in modernizing and expanding its infrastructure stock, including roads, telecommunications, and ports, and electricity still lag behind for citizens and industry. Presently, the country has a transportation system dominated by road transport, limited rail coverage that serves only the southern part of the country, one international airport, and 2 large deep water ports. Despite the rapid growth in electricity demand, much of the existing energy infrastructure is now old, inefficient, and in need of replacement. Clean energy has remained underdeveloped, undermining productivity and derailing economic transformation. Water, sanitation, and sewage systems have also come under increasing pressure because of the population growth. Certainly, these deficits need to be reversed to set the country on track towards the transformation agenda as outlined in the vision of the Ghana at 100 policy framework. The National Development Planning Commission launched the Ghana Infrastructure Plan in 2018. The plan encapsulates Ghana's long-term vision in strategic direction for infrastructure development within a 30-year planning horizon. It provides a coordinated and integrated approach to infrastructure planning, prioritization, funding, and delivery by engaging with stakeholders across the private sector, industry, and communities. The Ghana Infrastructure Plan envisages that by 2047, the country will attain the status of a high-income economy with an industrialized, diversified, export-oriented, and resilient economy that is very competitive against other players in the global economy. To support Ghana's plan to industrialize and to transit into a mature economy, Ghana will operate a liberalized energy market in which the private sector finances and delivers most infrastructure. The government is taking new actions to diversify energy sources whilst ensuring access to affordable, clean, and efficient energy supply to safeguard future economic security. To ensure security of electricity supply, new hydroelectric and thermal power plants, including the Pualugu and Jubilee projects, will be completed. Solar power generation will be expanded, and new sources from coal, nuclear plants, and biomass will become important contributors. By 2047, a total of 50,000 megawatts of power will be available to drive industrial development and enhance livelihood opportunities for citizens. This will be composed of increased contributions from new energy sources such as nuclear and renewable, as well as old ones such as petroleum. A reliable and high-performing road network helps to improve productivity. The government is committed to addressing the challenges of the road transport sector by building a better and smarter road network that drives growth. Ghana's current road network of 78,000 kilometers will increase to 253,000 kilometers by 2047, including an ambitious resurfacing program. A $272 billion investment with vehicles will be introduced across the country as part of the mass transport system. This will improve road safety, reduce traffic, and accidents by 90%. The vision of the aviation sector is to position Ghana as a preferred aviation hub for business in West Africa. The Kotoka International Airport has recently been expanded to make it one of the best connected countries in the world. The Tamale and Kumasi airports being upgraded to the status of international airports will be completed to open up opportunities and connections to Ghana. Smaller airports such as the Sunyani and Takoradi airports will be expanded to handle current and future capacity requirements, including emergency, medical, and tourism purposes. The vision of the maritime sector is to provide an efficient, reliable, multimodal transport and contribute to enhance regional economic development within a safe, affordable, and sustainable environment. There has been a significant investment activity at Tema and Takoradi ports of over $3 billion to support current and future freight movements. This port development program will reposition Tema as the leading container hub of the Accra region and Takoradi as the dominant oil and gas services hub. Ghana Infrastructure Plan seeks to encourage inland transport that will cater for long-term growth in import and export trade by sea and to support domestic freight movements. This will involve the completion of the Accra Inland Port on a 400-acre parcel of land in the Ashanti region to support trade with other landlocked countries and the development of the Wipe and Akosomo ports to facilitate inland transport. Rail transport currently forms less than 1% of Ghana's transportation modal mix for passenger transport and 3% for freight. Over the next 30 years, the $26 billion Network Rail Enhancement Program will increase Ghana's rail network from 947 kilometers to 4,007 kilometers across the entire country. The construction of an 84-kilometer railway line connecting Tema and Akosomo is ongoing. Other key priority rail projects will also include the Trans-ECOWAS line and the Accra-Ouagadougou line. Towards Ghana's vision for a sustainable transport system, a well-targeted metro rail system will be implemented in Accra, Kumasi, Tamanek, and Sekeni Takoradi. This will improve public transport and intercity connectivity in some of Ghana's busiest cities. Over 35% of Ghana's population, including businesses, are subscribed to superfast broadband. For the next 3 decades, the vision for the ICT sector is to build a high-capacity digital infrastructure to drive economic growth, improve governance, enhance competitiveness, and support social development. National internet penetration is expected to double by 2047, as the government plans to invest $2.6 million to improve fiber optic connectivity across the country. Public places such as hospitals, schools, public parks, and business operating centers, including government services, will have access to ultra-fast broadband services. A well-functioning housing market is linked to the wider health of the economy. However, for decades, housing supply has not kept pace with the increasing demand from the growing population. The government is committed to increasing housing supply through infrastructure investments, urban regeneration programs, as well as new residential developments. Plans are underway to launch the National Urban Regeneration Program to breathe life into poorly developed land to be used for housing. This will not only phase out slums, but also deliver at least 100,000 new homes through private sector involvement. With extensive policy and institutional reforms to attain and sustain economic stability, Ghana is on its way to become one of the highest income countries in Africa.
The Blackstone Stadium is a futuristic facility that will be built under Ghana's long-term national development plan to host a major international sporting event such as the FIFA World Cup or the Olympic Games. It will be to Ghana what the Statue of Liberty is to America or the Eiffel Tower is to France. It will be an iconic tribute to Ghanaian ingenuity, vision, and hard work. The stadium's state-of-the-art features will draw from the best of the 21st century technology, engineering, and architecture. It will be eco-friendly and a powerhouse of social, economic, and sporting activities. The entire roof will be made up of solar panels to provide electricity for the stadium. Solid and liquid waste generated at the stadium will be recycled to provide additional energy. There will be 4,000 underground parking spaces, equivalent to a 4-story building. The 5 points of the star will contain the following: a hotel, offices, conference facilities, entertainment facilities, recreational facilities, shops, restaurants, a world-class sports medicine and research facility, and a national sports museum. The stadium will be linked by road and rail as part of the National Rail and Highways network that will go through all 10 regional capitals. The Black Star Stadium is expected to attract millions of tourists every year from within and outside Ghana. It will provide thousands of jobs directly and indirectly to the youth of Ghana. The future of Ghana. Dream it, plan it, live it. Brought to you.
I said one thing about it too. I want to go to that stadium. Where? So many questions. I'm sure the answers will be here, will be hinted here, because next we have a presentation of infrastructure, economic growth, and national development, academic experience, and the way forward. Our speaker is Chairman of the NEC and Senior Advisor to the President on the Sustainable Development Goals. Let's welcome Dr. Nimoy. We're live on YouTube, on Free2Air, also on Facebook, we're live on the NEC channel as well. And this is the launch of infrastructure plan.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. President, Chief Justice, leadership of Parliament, honorable members of Parliament, leadership and members of the Parliamentary Committee on Economy and Development, heads of the state agencies, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you on behalf of the members and staff of the National Development Planning Commission. Development, they say, is history. So I'm going to start with a little bit of history. Mr. President, in 1965, the government of the Department launched what was the first ever infrastructure, physical and industrial development plan for Ghana. It was also the first in Africa. Among other things, the plan aimed to extend the Tamamoto Way to Accra, from the north through Kumasi by 1970. It also sought to modernize our cities and towns and ensure that industrial activities were spread equitably across the country. This, he envisioned, will be the foundation of Ghana's economic transformation, which began in 1955 under his leadership with the Industrial Development Corporation. Unfortunately, the infrastructure plan was abandoned after the 1966 coup, along with the famous 7-year development plan that it was to support. And thus began a decades-long decline in infrastructure, human settlements planning, and indeed the Ghanaian economy itself. In 1962, for example, Ghana's per capita income was 73% higher than that of South Korea. Today, it is 95% lower than that of South Korea. In fact, South Korea now gives us foreign aid, and about half of our technical staff were in fact trained in South Korea as a result of that aid. Not surprisingly, we are at the IMF assessment for the 17th time since 1966. To paraphrase the American rapper J. Cole, we've come a long way, but we went the wrong way. In 2015, President, under your leadership, the Commission began putting together the Ghana Infrastructure Plan as part of the preparation of Ghana's long-term national development plan, which coupled subsequently came to be known as the 40-year National Development Plan. The name 40-year Development Plan doesn't appear anywhere in the document. And I remember being worried that Ghanaians were going to oppose that. So I actually went to Professor Sabuki, who was then the chairman, and I said, Chairman, we need to launch a kind of a counter-campaign to reverse that. He said, no, anyway, Ghanaians will get used to long-term planning. And so it stuck. Both were meant to guide development policies of successive governments through medium-term and annual action plans, creating jobs and building the kind of prosperous and equitable society the Prime Minister envisioned for us. For a myriad of reasons, neither plan was implemented in any meaningful way. And here we are 10 years later, seeking to pick up the pieces. Mr. President, when we inaugurated the current commission earlier this year, you re-echoed public demands for a new long-term national development plan, including all the plans by the previous government that will be flexible enough to guide the preparation of political parties' manifestos, but also strategic enough to keep our eyes on the higher objectives of development, such as the eradication of poverty and the fostering of a just and prosperous society. It is significant that you have been summoned, Mr. President, by fate and history to join us today to finish the work that you started a decade ago. Congratulations. The launch of the infrastructure plan is the first step as preparatory towards the process of preparing what will be a composite long-term plan that will include a systematic review and incorporation of not just the 40-year development plan, which was prepared under the NEC government, but also Ghana Beyond Aid, Ghana at 100, and the long-term National Development Perspective Framework, all of which were prepared by the NPP government. By the end of 2026, we expect to have a comprehensive long-term National Development Plan called Ghana Vision 2057, a roadmap to economic transformation and shared prosperity. Now, I know some of you are wondering why we need a long-term development plan in the first place, when we have failed in our most previous attempt. Well, we need it, because without that, we are not going anywhere. We may make some progress here and there, but it will be likely to fall below what we actually can do with long-term national development planning. And our development challenges will just build up. An example is what Japan did when they talked about doubling their economy every 10 years as part of their prospective plan. In the end, they actually doubled it every 7 years. That's because long-term plans help you to mobilize resources in the population behind you. Long-term planning again provides strategic path to growth and prosperity. For example, we all talk about the 24-hour economy. The 24-hour economy was originally part of the long-term national development plan, the 40-year national development plan, even though it's being implemented 8 years later. But as they say, better late than never. It's to give you an idea that having a long-term plan does not preclude the implementation of certain programs in the short term. In its original formulation, in fact, the 24-hour economy included 4 shifts, not 3, 4, where in certain strategic industries, we're going to encourage 6-hour shifts, where productivity will go up, and what is ordinarily produced in 8 hours will then be produced in 6 hours. Imagine the number of well-paying jobs, therefore, that would have been created by now if we have started building. Every serious country I know of has a long-term plan, even if we haven't heard of it. In the United States, for example, has one of the most dynamic labor markets and one of the lowest unemployment rates among its peers. This didn't happen by accident. It has, the United States, that is, has a 100-year strategy for creating jobs, starting from 1950 to 2050, and it is backed by an Employment Act, researched by the Council of Economic Advisors, which is the U.S. equivalent of NDPC, and the designation of, quote, maximum employment as the primary objective of monetary policy, followed by price stability and moderate long-term interest rate. We failed because of misunderstanding that a long-term plan has nothing to do with the present, that we should worry about today and let the future take care of itself. Some of you said that, well, in 40 years we'll all be dead, forgetting that our children are going to be here. That's a little selfish way of looking at it, that because we'll be dead, we shouldn't worry about our children. Whatever we do today must be a reflection of the future. I mentioned the 24-hour economy because they're very small. Under the 40-year National Development Plan, for example, we projected that Ghana would need 20.2 million rooms. between 2018 and 2057 to be able to provide adequate and decent housing for the population over the period. In order to do this, we estimate that we would need at least the following: 526 million tons of cement, 64 million tons of iron rods, 212 million square meters of wood, and 1 billion square meters of sand at the very minimum. This was a signal for the government and private sector to begin working together immediately starting in 2018 to build the necessary factories that will produce these construction materials. We have created hundreds of thousands of jobs by now. All this included, I'm just going to go through because of lack of time, the Sectoral master plan. People used to think that it was only for the northern, the three northern regions back then, but it was for the entire northern half, second half of the country, and it came with a Southern Development Bank, which unfortunately didn't find expression. And from our projections, at its height within 10 to 15 years, it would have created so many jobs with different skills levels that we see a situation where young people would graduate from high school or universities, from Cape Coast, Accra, Afao, and then move up north for employment, reversing the trend. We also have what was known as the West Africa Growth Corridor, which was going to link Abidjan, Accra, Lome, and Ouagadougou, and then go from Accra through Kumasi to Burkina Faso, what is known as the corridor development. They had the Japanese government's support at the time. The presenter mentioned the light rail systems for Accra, Kumasi, we had the Bupeng City Structure Plan, we had the National Spatial Development Framework, which gave us the establishment of LUSPA, Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority, that representatives are here. The Greater Kumasi Master Plan, which we have seen at least two Japanese automobile assembly plants in Kumasi. Tamale City Structure Plans, Employment and Future of Work Strategy, Competition Law, and also Consumer Protection Law. We propose that these two critical laws for industrialization and development have been under development for nearly 20 years. And I remember my friend Stu Gabra saying at one point that one of our biggest challenges to development is a lack of a sense of urgency. And this is how can you have such critical laws without a competition law, you really cannot have industrialization. And yet, it's been that if we have a consumer protection law, all the time we spent chasing DSTV, we have been spent doing something more strategic. And then the Competition Commission would have dealt with DSTV. So we have all these things. Strategy for the transformation of the informal sector. We are not going anywhere without the transformation of the informal sector, which accounts for between 80 and 90% of employment, but only 27% of GDP, because the value addition there is so low. As they say, so much business and so little value addition. Ghana Stock Exchange, because I listened to the President's speech at the UN, we passionately advocated for more stake in our economy. And I thought it was significant in the sense of history because in 1951, the Economic Survey for Ghana made exactly the same point, that we didn't have enough stake. So the Ghana Stock Exchange would be a major source of Ghana industrialization strategy. We proposed a manufacturing advisory council made up of Ghanaian industrialists at home and abroad so that we can tap into international experience. Exports Advisory Council, agriculture, and then perhaps one of the most famous based on popular request is what we call the Good Society Campaign, because everyone keeps saying that we need new sets of values to run this country. Nevertheless, that never happened. The important point is that everything I've listed had timelines of 2018, 2021, and 2025. They were not meant to be completed in 40 years. They were meant to lay the foundation for what was happening. Now, I've touched on that. Given the centrality of the Commission, and given the limited knowledge that all these issues are, I'll quickly go over what the Commission is and what it does, so that we know. The Commission's mandate includes advising the President on development plan policy and strategy. And at the request of the President of Parliament, it's also supposed to undertake macroeconomic and structural analysis. Thereafter, it allows the government to implement policy. The Commission does not implement policy. The House government formulates policy, the government implements. And then the Commission monitors and evaluates the work of it. This is the responsibility of the government based on intellectual mandate. For commissions, the President appoints people he believes share his vision based on its electoral mandate. There is also institutional representation from bodies like the Association of Ghana Industries, Ghana Employers Association, Organized Labor, and the Ghana Institution of Planning. Those who may not have or share in the President's vision are nevertheless not left out. They have something to say, they can always do that through what we call the cross-sectoral planning groups. The Commission, I must point out, because folks keep saying that, the Commission is not a board or an advisory council. It is, in fact, a working commission with a full-time chairman who has an office there and works together with the various subcommittees that are set up. So it's quite a very busy commission. And I'm happy, I must congratulate the members of the commissioners and the staff for the hard work they put in the preparation of the President's well-needed Now, as I speak, these are the 9 committees that work to support the work of the Commission and ultimately advise the President. Economic policy, social development policy, energy and private sector development, transport and logistics. And this is critical. We thought this is so critical to the success of the 24-hour economy because it's not enough to build roads, but how quickly you get things from one point to the other is equally important, and that's where the logistics issue comes in. The last study that was conducted found that the average speed of a cargo truck in Ghana was only 80 miles per hour. This was about 10, 15 years ago. It's probably going lower, where the recommended minimum is 55 miles per hour. So we have a whole subcommittee to look at that. Agriculture and natural resources, employment, productivity, earnings, governance and public sector reforms, environment, infrastructure, social development, and finally, international relations. Given what is going on in the United States now and the disruptions in the global economy, we cannot afford to have a national development plan that doesn't look at our position in the global economy and how we respond to these things. Now, let me quickly get to the issue of the relationship between infrastructure and economic growth. We often assume that there's a positive relationship. As long as you keep spending on infrastructure, the economy is going to grow. But that relationship is not automatic. And I remember once having a discussion with Professor Godfrey, which, as we all know, was the longest serving Minister of Finance in Ghana. And he told me that one day, there was a time when there were a lot of complaints of poor infrastructure in the country, yet his data showed that we're spending more and more money on infrastructure. So he put together a team to examine the data. And they realized that even though they said capital spending, most of that money was actually going to buy pajeros and other people's government officials. So you then have to then make a distinction between those spendings and then those that actually go into fiscal. And we may very well have some of that. Where on paper we have rising spending on infrastructure, but on the ground it's not really taking place. Now, one of the reasons for this weak linkage is often due to weak governance. In the sense that infrastructure in many states, little cities, that's actually worth much less than that because it's been inflated. Infrastructure itself is not used properly. A good example for me personally is a 3-lane road at Kaneshie Market. I remember we took a loan, an international loan for that. 3 lanes. It's now been reduced to almost 1 lane because the rest have been taken over by people selling live chickens and doing conferences. So arithmetically then, that road that's supposed to contribute whatever it was captured is now contributing just 1/3. And yet we have to pay the whole loan for it. And this is another hidden source of difficulties of paying our international and even local debt because we are not fully utilizing the infrastructure that we get. In the case of Ghana, our situation has been aggravated by distortions in fiscal policy stretching over decades. For example, for more than 20 years until recently, the government's wage bill has exceeded target by an average of about 10% per year. But infrastructure spending has suffered budgetary shortfalls averaging about 7% per year. Obviously, starting next year, given what we heard from our brother from the Ministry of Finance, this is going to be a major departure where we no longer have any shortfalls. With the economy then performing below potential. And when that happens, as we've seen, tax revenue also fell short by around 4%. So we're exceeding our wage bill by an average of 10% and then falling short in terms of infrastructure and growth and by extension revenue. Meanwhile, expanding is going up, so we end up with fiscal challenges. The infrastructure plan we launched will have purpose to address that. Since time is too far gone, let me quickly jump onto what the Commission is doing to help advance the President's development agenda and the development agenda of successive governments. We decided to begin with the normal strategic alliances to be able to strengthen our own capacity, because frankly, we cannot do everything together. So it's both the private sector and the public sector affair where we recently signed an MOU with KPMG, for example, for us to work together and do cutting-edge analysis. We also engage with the Ghana Stock Exchange. We're going to be doing something called research into the fire sector. Not fire as in Ojak, but fire as in finance, insurance, and real estate, FIRE. This is a very critical part of every economy, yet we don't pay much attention to it. If you look at the international ranking for insurance, we rank very low, and yet insurance is a very deep source of finance. When you go to South Africa and you see all those big office buildings and malls, most of them are funded from insurance. Bank of Ghana, we've also engaged. We strongly believe in local economic development. In our meeting with Bank of Ghana, we agreed that we'll work together to be able to analyze credit data, not just on sector, but on regional and district basis. And of course, my brother from the Ministry of Finance mentioned how closely we've been working. GNPC has been very supportive. And because we are emphasizing an important indicator of government progress, we've begun the process of training labor economists. Believe it or not, 20 years ago, when our friend economists at the ministry, 20 years ago, just a few weeks ago, I verified, and we still do not have labor economists at the ministry for labor. And during the time I was talking to Joel, he looked back about 10 years, and we still, so it looks like, apart from the first core of labor economists that are trained, we never really had labor economists. And everyone keeps saying, good for them, great jobs, and yet we don't even know where the jobs are. Unemployment, there are different types of unemployment, for example. And unless you understand that, you'll never be able to deal with unemployment. We have geographical unemployment where the jobs are here and people are here, but they can't get them because of public transportation. That is different from skills-based unemployment. So we are looking at that. We are looking at expenditure-based GDP approach. Employment creation, we decided to calculate something called the absorption rate. So we continue to look at the unemployment rate, but the absorption rate for us is the most important indicator because it tells us that the economy's ability to absorb the growing labor force. And we are lucky to have Professor Wagwati as a member of the commission. Wage growth is our single biggest indicator, and also productivity. During the elections, the president used just 4 words that I think captured the essence of one of the biggest theories of thesis in the world. He said, the economy must work efficiently. And it sounds simple, but it's actually a simple way of stating what economists call multi-factor productivity. And that's what sets the rich countries apart from the poor countries. And so productivity development, we've started discussions with MDPI, and we're going to work on that. Strengthening macroeconomic modeling, we need to do that. We need to know if the CD depreciates by 1%, what are the implications for revenue generations, for exports, imports, and so forth. Local economic development I talked about. We are also, Professor context here, we've begun laying the groundwork for what is known as district business climate surveys. We know very little of what is happening in the districts, and so time has come for us to dive into that and use that information to advise the president, share with the Minister of Finance and other areas. And this is very critical. If you look at the most recent data on foreign direct investment, almost all of it is based in Greater Accra, 86%. It used to be 80%. It's now gone to 86% of foreign direct investment in Greater Accra. And mind you, Greater Accra is also the smallest land area in the country, just 1.4% of the total land area. And you are putting 86% of your FDI here. That means you have population pressures, which means you have over 1,680 persons per square meter in Greater Accra compared to a national average of just 102. So massive disparity. And as a result of that, Accra City alone accounts for about 40% of our GDP. This is simply not a sustainable model for national government. We're going to be working on that to reverse transparency and accountability. The ministry, we are already working, and I'm so happy. Unfortunately, Arthur is not here, but I'm sure his deputy will take the credit for that. Arthur has really drawn the line as to how ministry should behave in order for them to be responsible, transparent, and efficient in the utilization of scarce resources. So, for example, besides amending the Public Financial Management Act, he's made it clear with the support of Honorable Kumar, to be credit, I'm not sure he's here, but he actually made a statement in Parliament, the private members bill, no plan, no cash. So no, from now on, any ministry that goes to the Minister of Finance looking for money to spend must first present its plan, verified and certified by NDPC before they get a person. And this is really revolutionary. That's what I believe. And then to make it even worse, he taxed the school a little bit and he said, if you don't submit your plan this year, your third quarter locations are we giving it to you. So then they can't run it. So NDPC, we have to work over them. Some of them are working to 2 a.m. just to help these ministries to So we've done that, and this is serious because if you look, we recently launched the Annual Progress Report 2022. It's the first time that we've actually launched it publicly so that the public also understand how government performed. And I'm holding in my hands here, I think there are 13 different ministries and departments and agencies. And it's on our website, so I don't think I'm doing anything wrong. They refused to present their annual progress reports, to tell Ghanaians how they spend the money they were given. They just refused to do that. And oh, it's here. All right. So what does scarce in the post? There's two of the biggest spenders of our money, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education. They can present. Between them, they account for over 51% of the government's wage bill. And they didn't present anything. And then you turn on television and watch back, and you hear that Tamale Hospital was paying a dead person for 26 months, and at the same time complaining that they didn't have ventilators. They are telling his funeral, okay. So the president said they are telling his funeral. There are quite a few other things that we will also do. Civic auditing, we are going to modernize our M&E system, and so that the public itself would have a say in evaluating the performance of the government. And then NDPC itself will begin by building our capacity to do economic and employment impact assessment of all major government projects and sectoral policies. So we know direct employment, indirect employment, induced employment. This is done in other places, but we don't do that. And lastly, since the IMF program is on everybody's lips, perhaps I should touch on that. When we did the 40-year national development, and we're very much concerned about that, the recurrent resort to IMF support. And so we looked at various budgets, we examined them, and something very funny came up. It turned out that every new government, starting from 1966, that came into office, blamed the previous government for bad management, excess deficits, and so forth and so on. But by the time they left office, they were doing exactly the same thing. And this was occurring consistently, even under the Fourth Republic. And so we came up with 4 steps. Unfortunately, they haven't been followed, but we will try and restore them in the next long-term national development plan. The first step is stabilization, which is what the IMF was set up for. Their mandate is stabilization and nothing more. Next to stabilization is recovery. Actually, to stabilize the economy, it must begin to grow. And there are indicators, we have a whole set of indicators for that. And then once it begins to grow, we have what is known as the expansion phase. The economy must grow faster than it did before. And then we have transformation, which is increase in productivity. This obviously is a very tall order, but it's doable. To use an expression, which could mean 2 things at the same time. It means we have traveled very far. It could also mean that we are yet to travel further ahead of us. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope we're live on NPC's Facebook page, we're live on Think Media Online's Facebook page. And it's now time for us to hear from our keynote speaker, and he's the person of His Excellency John Mahama, President of Ghana, to address us and officially launch Ghana Infrastructure Management.